Hi, my name is Jacqueline Fletcher. I'm going to talk to you about U.S. food policy, specifically the differences between the USDA and the FDA. Now, I hope you have the PowerPoint slides that I provided so that you can follow along. Let's begin. So first, I'm going to talk to you about the history. The USDA is the United States Department of Agriculture. The FDA is the Food, Drug Administration. The United States Department of Agriculture was founded by President Abraham Lincoln in 1862 and deemed the People's Department. In 1884, the USDA's Bureau of Animal Industry established to prevent the use of diseased animals in food. In 1890, President Benjamin Harrison signed the first law requiring meat products to be inspected. In 1906, Federal Meat Inspection Act prohibits adulterated meat and meat products for food to be sold and ensured slaughtering and processing were completed in sanitary conditions. In 1906, the Pure Food and Drug Act prevents the processing, transport, or sale of misbranded and/or adulterated products. In 1938, Congress passed the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed this into law. This gave the FDA the authority to issue food safety standards, among other authorities. I do want to mention that I'm talking about the FDA right now, so why is this in the USDA category? Well, the FDA was actually under the USDA for quite some time before it was transitioned out. So during this 1938 period, the FDA was actually under the USDA. In 1957, Poultry Products Inspection Act. This was an interstate poultry products shipped are continuously inspected prior, after, and before slaughter. This act also required sanitary conditions for all processing phases. So this act aligned the USDA with meat and now poultry. So the poultry was now at the same standards, obviously different standards, but same goals as meat, and both now under the USDA. In 1967, the Wholesome Meat Act required states to align with federal regulation and have more adequate inspections of meat. So if the state couldn't create their own sufficient program, they had to adopt the federal system. In 1970, Egg Products Inspection Act was a mandatory inspection of the processing of processed egg products. So the USDA has meat, poultry, and in 1970 has eggs, all with the same goal of safety, quality. In 1977, the Food Safety and Quality Service was created to perform meat and poultry grading and inspection, which later became what is now called FSIS, or Food Safety and Inspection Service. This happened in 1981. In 1978, the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act was amended to include all meat inspected by FSIS for food consumption to be of humane methods. FDA history. In 1927, USDA's Bureau of Chemistry evolved into Food, Drug, and Insecticide Administration, which later became the Food and Drug Administration. In 1940, FDA was moved outside the USDA and fell under the Federal Security Agency, which ultimately became the Department of Health and Human Services. So the image provided in the PowerPoint that you hopefully have in your hands is of the staff division of chemistry back in 1927, which I thought was pretty neat, and I pulled it off the FDA website. FDA key changes. Now, I already talked about this Federal Food and Drug Cosmetic Act, which happened in 1938, but now obviously the FDA was outside of the USDA as of 1940, and this gave the authority to issue food safety standards, authorize inspections of facilities, also gave the authorization of standards of identity, fill a container for foods, and standards of quality. In 1988, the Food and Drug Administration Act officially established the FDA as an agency of the Department of Health and Human Services and spelled out the FDA's responsibilities. Next, I want to talk to you about authority between the USDA and the FDA. The USDA regulatory authority is ensuring the wholesomeness, safety, labeling, accuracy of meat, poultry, and processed egg products. Significant historical changes in the USDA related to food. Now, I've already talked about the Federal Meat Inspection Act, the Poultry Products Inspection Act, and also the Egg Inspection Act. I didn't put them on this slide, but those are all three very significant additions and changes for the USDA, but I didn't want to repeat myself, but those seriously impacted the role, responsibility, and authority of the USDA, so don't forget those. I just didn't want to repeat. In 1887, Congress passed the Interstate Commerce Act that gave federal government sole authority for interstate commerce. In 1990, the Nutrition Labeling and Education Act, all food products must bear nutrition labeling and claims should be factual and not misleading. This gave the USDA more power and more responsibility for ensuring proper labeling. And in 1995, FSIS became responsible for the inspection of egg products rather than the poultry division of the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service. So just a transfer from one department to another underneath the USDA. I'm going to talk to you quickly about the structure of the USDA, and then we'll go into the FDA's authority as well as the structure of the FDA. So this slide is a little bit of an eyesore, and I apologize, but I pulled it directly off the USDA website, and I find that to make my own would have been time-consuming, yes, but also the USDA has many departments that are related to food, so I wanted to put this image on both the slides that I'm going to talk about. So the Food and Nutrition Service gives access to food and helps improve the diets of Americans. So think like WIC or food stamps. This service is in charge of that. The Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion, they're responsible for the dietary guidelines that are published every 5 years. So think like My Plate, Food Pyramid of yesteryear. That department is responsible for those. The most recent dietary guideline was in 2015. Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, they're responsible for animal welfare and the regulation of GMOs. The Food Safety and Inspection Service, as I've mentioned, ensures the wholesomeness, the labeling accuracy, and the safety of meat, poultry, and egg products. The Farm Service Agency helps support farmers, whether it be from disaster relief or from loans. The Agricultural Marketing Service assists farmers in international affairs. And to continue on my next slide, Foreign Agricultural Service develops, promotes, and maintains international markets through trade agreements and negotiations. Economic Research Service, this subdivision research helps inform key decision makers on economic and policy issues concerning farming, food, rural development, and natural resources. Agricultural Research Service is a primary research division of the USDA, and they're tasked with exploring as well as finding a resolution for agricultural related issues, whether it be at farm or at consumer level. National Agricultural Statistics Service, they conduct many surveys annually and are part of the Agricultural Department's farm census. Grain Inspection, Packers, and Stockyards Administration, they guarantee fair trade and viable market conditions in the meat and poultry industry. So a lot, to say the least, divisions and subdivisions of the USDA are related to food, whether it be farm, fork, or table. FDA. So the regulatory of the FDA is to ensure safety, quality, effectiveness of drugs, animals, and all food products, excluding meat, poultry, and processed eggs. So I wanted to bring this slide to your attention, and honestly, the next two slides are quite important and a great take-home. So if you could work on remembering these two, that would be probably ideal for your benefit, not just mine, obviously. But this is just a quick view of the differences of jurisdiction for the USDA and the FDA. So the USDA, like I mentioned, egg products, meat, poultry, catfish, randomly due to a farm bill in 2008, multi-ingredient products that have more than 2% cooked meat or 3% raw meat. Think like lean cuisine, Stouffer's, some soups even, think that. Open-faced sandwiches, and then USDA Organic is a voluntary program that would obviously be under the USDA. And then FDA is basically everything else. So you have your infant formulas, you have your cereals, your sodas, your juices, your dairy, your soups, your baked goods, shelled eggs, animal feed, sausage casings, all other products that are not under USDA jurisdiction are under the FDA. And then another quick view chart, which I find extremely helpful for me. Quick disclaimer, it is out of date. So this is from the Office of Technology Assessment in 1992. So, like I said, in 1995, FSIS gained control over the egg products inspections and their authority. So this is out of date, but I did want to include it because it's a great quick view of the agency, their authorities through legislation, and then their responsibilities. So you have your Food and Drug Administration, which gets their authority through the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and their responsibilities as described are safety, quality, effectiveness of animal feed and drugs in all foods except meat and poultry and eggs. And then you have your USDA FSIS, which gets their authority through the Federal Meat Inspection Act, the Poultry Products Inspection Act, and now, after 1995, the Egg Products Inspection Act. And then their responsibility is the safety, wholesomeness, accuracy of labeling of meat, poultry, and egg products. The USDA Agricultural Marketing Service, this is out of date, so just disregard the second half. And then the EPA, National Marine Fisheries, those also have say in food. This presentation, like you know, is just USDA and FDA, but feel free to utilize this chart for other reasons. Significant historical changes in the agency related to food. In 1914, U.S. v. Lexington Mill and Elevator Company, it was the first Supreme Court decision ruling on food additives, and it basically stated that in order to ban a food, the government must show a relationship with the food and a harm to a human. So it protects both the consumers, but it also protects the manufacturers, because the manufacturers aren't forced to stop producing their product without just cause, without scientific proof that their product is harmful. Another court case that I wanted to bring to your attention is in 1924, the U.S. v. 95 Barrels alleged the apple cider, and Supreme Court determines FDA condemns all aspects of products label that may deceive or mislead, even if technically factual. So, in my personal opinion, I think the USDA and the FDA, yes, they have different approaches, but one of their main goals is to prevent misleading products on store shelves. A few more historical changes. In 1960, the Color Additive Amendment enacted. It forced manufacturers to establish safety of color additives in foods, and this gave more power to the FDA from a color additive perspective. In 1976, Vitamins and Minerals Amendment prevented the FDA from establishing standards limiting potency of vitamins and minerals in food supplements or regulating them as drugs. And then the Nutrition Labeling Act and Education Act, I've already mentioned it, but obviously this affects the FDA too, so I added it here. The Food and Drug Administration Modernization Act. Regulation of health claims for foods, protection of the public health is a shared responsibility by all constituents. Yes, FDA is the regulating body, but it's a joint effort from the FDA, international constituents, consumer groups, industry, etc. FDA Food Safety and Modernization Act, or shortened to FSMA. It's the new enforcement authorities for food, and it's the addition of preventative controls. So if you aren't familiar with the food industry, preventative controls should directly trigger you to think HACCP. HACCP is a required program for all USDA facilities, and having a HACCP program and HACCP sub-plans are required, and USDA inspectors look at this every day, if not every week, for each establishment they're responsible to look over. Now the FDA, through FSMA, will have a similar program for preventative controls for safety and quality. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, in 2016, the food labeling and the revision of the nutrition facts and supplement facts labels. So we've had our current labels for, I think, 25 years, 26 years, and they haven't been changed. And it's to due time, so they went through and was passed. It's effective already, so new products will start to have this new nutrition facts panel, which you can see on the right-hand side of the slide provided. It focuses on a different view to increase the view of the calories, have added sugar called out. Potassium is replacing some vitamins. So it's definitely a change, and I think that's the last significant change. Let's see. Yep. So back to structure. I did my own little chart for the FDA, just for the departments that are related to food. FDA is huge. And if you look at the organizational chart online at the FDA website, you can't even look at it. It's so teeny tiny. It's very not user friendly. So I created my own just related to food for you all, so that you can just see the dynamics that are related to what you are interested in. So the Office of the Commissioner leads scientific activities, policy, and agency operations. The Office of Foods and Veterinary Medicine leads foods programs that focus on food safety and nutrition. And under that, there's 3 subgroups from like the Office of Resource Planning and Strategic Management, the Office of Coordinated Outbreak Response and Evaluation, and also the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition. And then you have the Office of Global Regulatory Operations and Policy, which is under the Office of the Commissioner, and their worldwide product quality and safety efforts. And then they have 2 subdepartments under them: the Office of International Programs and the Office of Regulatory Affairs. So we've talked about history, we've talked about authority, we've talked about jurisdiction, we've talked about significant changes. I just wanted to talk about a few challenges that the USDA and the FDA are having currently. There's dozens of them. I think the media has really jumped on the food bandwagon lately, from non-GMOs to ABF to natural to added sugars to all of these things. There's so many to choose from, but I just wanted to briefly highlight 2 of them for you. The first one being for the USDA. The Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act of 2015 was signed in July of 2016, and it tasks the Agricultural and Marketing Service to develop a GMO mandatory labeling program in less than 2 years. Now, you might say mandatory labeling. Whoa, that's great. Well, the controversy is, what does mandatory labeling mean? Does it say this is GMO or this is not GMO? No. It could be go here for more information, whether it be a website or scan here for more information, a QR code. How many people are actually going to do that? How many people actually have access to that? It's definitely controversial. On top of that, the AMS only has 2 years to create a cohesive program. Is that viable? Is that even, is it possible? It's not really sure. So with the GMO subject being at the top of every table debate, I think, it's an interesting law to be put in place, and then it's also an interesting task to give to AMS. I didn't put this law into my previous slides because, yes, it's written into law now, but it hasn't affected anyone, and it hasn't affected any department other than the fact that the AMS is now tasked with this job, basically. And then the other controversy that I wanted to bring up was with the FDA. And so I discussed that there's a new nutrition facts panel coming out. It's effective, so any new product will have it, but then all of the current products on your store shelves will be grandfathered in for 2 years, and then they'll have to be forced to update to the new nutrition facts panel as well. But this new facts panel, it calls out added sugars, and it distinguishes naturally occurring versus added. And some see that as unnecessary, since both share the same effect on weight. And also, in addition to that, it's difficult to understand and measure how much added sugar is in an actual product, like a finished good, because sometimes, like for example, fermented products, you put so much sugar in, you don't get the same amount of sugar in your final product because of the process. So it's an interesting focus. I feel like every 5 years we go through a different hot thing, like protein is great, fat is terrible, cholesterol is bad, or focus on trans fats, focus on saturated fat, focus on this. Well, I feel like this is jumping on the focus on added sugars. I do understand that the added sugars is a huge reason for obesity, but it's not specifically the added sugars. It's the product in its entirety of what they're eating. A lot of products with added sugars also have a lot of other not so great things. So it's an interesting dynamic. If you also think further, the USDA doesn't have a proposed rule or even a rule for the nutrition facts panel to line up with the FDA, but it's looming. Like, they're going to have one soon. Will they add added sugars as a call out? Because any processed meat that has other ingredients, like a sausage or a hot dog or jerky, it's gonna have sugar. So it will say total sugar 7, added sugar 7. Is that a just thing? Is that fair to the meat industry? Will it give the meat industry a bad connotation? Is that a proper way to think of it? I'm not really sure. But I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to watch and read along with your PowerPoint. I appreciate your time and your effort in knowing the differences between USDA and FDA. I also want to just mention my Works Cited is available on the last 2 slides, so don't forget to look at that. And hopefully you have a better understanding of the USDA from a jurisdiction, history, and also the FDA, the differences between the two, their jurisdiction, their responsibility, and their agency and authority. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation and have a great day.